country has its version of the all-in soup. You know, the one where you throw in all the leftovers, add some herbs and spices, bulk it out with potatoes, dumplings, rice, whatever you have to hand. And there you go, instant and tasty fuel. Whether it's bouillabaisse in Marseille, Aalsuppe in Hamburg, or plain Irish stew, you'll find some version of it all around the world. It's sustainable, low cost, and most important, usually very tasty. Now, Estonia is no exception. It's a fascinating place, tucked away on the corner of the Baltic Sea and with a long tradition of seaborne trade via the Hanseatic League and way back. Home to around 1 million people and several thousand times that number of trees, it has its own delightful cuisine built around seafood and game, including, of course, hernesuppe, an all-in soup, which serves you very well up there in the dark winters, but also occupies a very pleasant place on the table when partaken under the summer night skies when it hardly bothers to get dark at all. It's an interesting place, Estonia, with much to offer beyond the food, not least because it can lay claim to being the most digital country in the world, with almost all of its public services delivered fully online. The exception being divorce. You'll have to wait till next year for that. It's retained a strong entrepreneurial spirit, boasting, amongst other things, the highest per capita number of digital unicorns in the world. Think about Skype, Bolt or Wise and others, rather than imagine the city full of prancing electronic quadrupeds. But it also has a long history and rich culture of which the inhabitants are proud, happily taking their digital ease while dressed in traditional costumes and dancing to traditional tunes. A wonderful mixture of the past and the future. Which is why it made an excellent location for the 50th ISPIM conference last week. ISPIM, the International Society for Professionals in Innovation Management, ISPIM was founded in 1974 to create a community of practice around innovation management. It was an early response to the challenges of actually making innovation happen, and it remains one of the best meeting places to mix up academics, researchers, teachers, policymakers and practitioners, consultants, and whoever else has an interest in innovation. The 500 or so people swirling around make it a kind of all-in soup for ideas, with plenty of flavoursome mouthfuls to be had. So, amongst my takeaways from this year were some old favourites, serving up again some important stuff on persistently significant themes, in particular around sustainability. This year's papers and workshops were very much aimed at the system-level challenges. It's not just a matter of putting your own house in order, but rather of thinking at the network level. In these days of rising costs and availability scarcities, conserving energy and physical resources becomes a no-brainer. And there are significant opportunities in the new entrepreneurial space opened up by the Green Challenge. The frontier's now moved to the multiplayer game, which is all about creating high-impact change by mobilizing ecosystems. For example, in getting the circular economy from idea to effective practice. Which links well with the open innovation theme, another old favourite at ISPIM. Open innovation now celebrating its silver jubilee. Remember, Henry Chesborough's book was published way back in 2003. But of course, open innovation also picks up on a much older theme around distributed innovation. Now here again, the continuing stream of papers and tools on offer spoke more to system-level interaction, how to find partners, form relationships with them, and get the emergent properties, the whole being greater than the sum of the parts of collaborating ecosystems. Another perennial ISPIM theme is responsible innovation, particularly focusing on the question of inclusion of users and other stakeholders in innovation. Once again, the discussion and presentations leaned heavily towards this systems challenge, how to bring multiple perspectives into a co-creation process of innovation. By now, the why of user engagement seems obvious. Users have demonstrably got ideas which can add to the stock of insights and inspiration at the front end of innovation. And they also hold the key to downstream innovation, downstream diffusion, because understanding their world and creating solutions which fit that world is the key to what Everett Rogers calls compatibility, a rock on which otherwise great ideas can often founder. Users can help throughout the process, and there's plenty of evidence to advance that cause in sectors as diverse as healthcare, agriculture, and high-tech manufacturing. But there's still a conundrum. Why are firms often so reluctant to move from the rhetoric? It's easy enough to spout the slogans about innovation working for you, the user. It's easy to say that, but how do we actually move to building users into a process which, as Eric von Hippel notes, essentially involves free innovation? Now, one element of this is around where such involvement might take place, and particularly the role of laboratory environments where different players can come together and co-create in a safe, experimental way. And this idea of boundary innovation spaces is exemplified in the experience of Living Labs, which have developed a suite of methods and tools to help support co-creation with users in a variety of sectoral and regional contexts. And their stories are regularly shared at ISPIM. In fact, there's even a special interest group around Living Labs. Now, given today's interest in having some form of innovation lab as what has become a must-have fashion accessory for any organisation, the value of research and experience-based conversations about how to make such spaces actually work was very welcome at this conference. But like any good chef, there's also value in trying out new ingredients, bringing new flavours to the fore in our all-in soup. And the conference had some of those as well. I was particularly interested in the way that the early discussions from pre-pandemic days about possible standards for innovation management have matured. And they've moved centre stage. In many ways, this is a codification of what has been accumulating for over 100 years in terms of research and hard-won experience about what to do and what not to do to make innovation work. But now we have an international standard, ISO 56002, which moves the conversation forward, providing a reference model for both organizational systems and possibly the innovation managers who design and operate within them. Now, at first, that seems like a paradox. How can something as volatile and uncertain as innovation be confined within a standard? But a closer look reveals that it's all about what Peter Drucker would call the discipline of innovation. It's not a case of one size fits all, but rather a framework within which organizations, public or private, large or small, for and not for profit, all of these organizations need to work out their own version of a system which will help them repeat the innovation trick. Now, there's still a long way to go, but the growing evidence and the interest in the standard, which we saw at the conference, suggests that taking a systematic approach is an approach which pays off. That's a source of great comfort to people like me who have spent their lives building courses and writing textbooks on that premise. Perhaps the most topical and widespread, not to mention well-attended sessions were around AI. The sudden, or relatively sudden, new arrival which seems to offer so much potential to impact the innovation task in so many ways. Take so many aspects of it, creating ideas, finding opportunities within complex emerging markets, selecting, whatever you choose, AI has demonstrable form. It's already being used and adopted in an increasingly large number of organizations, and we heard about some of them in the conference. Does this spell the end of innovation management as a field of practice and research, and therefore possibly the last rites for conferences such as ISPIM? Or, as the conference actually suggested, is it more a case of learning to work with a co-intelligence, an assistant or a co-pilot adjunct which can help and amplify what we can already do. In particular, there was extensive discussion of the ways in which AI needs to be adapted and shaped by its users. It's emphatically not a plug-and-play solution. Its potential to automate certain kinds of jobs has been widely publicised, and there's a degree of concern bordering on panic that we are facing a bleak future for human work as the machines take over. We need to remember that other technological revolutions have held out similar promise and posed similar challenges. But experience suggests that in the long term, we might underestimate their full impact. But in the short term, there's a long period where we have to learn where and how to deploy them to advantage. Steam power wasn't an overnight game changer. It took decades for us to learn to use it well and to change our approaches to accommodate and deploy it effectively. So perhaps the most important research we need in this AI space is less around developing ever more powerful large language models and their like, but instead developing the absorptive capacity inside our organizations to make good use of this technology, to assimilate and deploy it. Back to our culinary metaphor. There were also some surprising mouthfuls, something which hit the taste buds and make you think differently for a moment about what you're eating. For me, there were several such moments. For example, the presentation of a case study of a bank in Kazakhstan. Now, we don't often hear much of Central Asia, and we certainly don't often think of it as a melting pot for high-tech ideas. In fact, our mental picture may lean more towards yurts pitched on wide, empty steppes with nomadic herdsmen tending their flocks. Yet this bank and the services it provides to a rapidly growing market beyond Kazakhstan itself suggest that a lot is happening behind the mountains. The Estonians' claim to be one of the most digitized places in the world was challenged by a set of public services offered on this Kazakh banking app, which not only allow you to pay taxes, identify yourself and get married, but ahead of their Estonian counterparts, you can already also get divorced. Now, that's a simple reminder of just how global the innovation game is, but also of the growing number of radical innovations which emerge from very different contexts. It made me think of M-Pesa and the quiet revolution around mobile money, which has been taking place in Africa for close on a quarter of a century. We default perhaps too quickly to our conventional role models, the usual suspects, and we sometimes neglect the creativity and market opportunity which offers an alternative crucible for innovation. And another surprise was for me a poignant reminder of the challenges which innovation can sometimes rise to. It was a paper jointly authored by Ukrainian and Finnish researchers which looked at the potential for an innovation approach to reconstruction. Citing the hideous figures about damage to things like energy infrastructure during the war, it reframed the destruction as an opportunity for the future, not just to rebuild, but to do so in new and more sustainable directions. Quite a lot of food for thought there. When I cook or eat my version of all-in soup, I tend to save my favourite parts until the last, just to enjoy those last mouthfuls. And this conference overview is no exception. My big interest is in how we communicate the ideas and skills around innovation and how we manage it, how we teach, coach, guide, mentor that process. And this year's conference had plenty of rich morsels to choose from lots of AI-linked inspiration and practical tools, through to a variety of hands-on workshops around many different ways in which we can engage students and learners in learning spaces, whether they're classrooms, workshop halls, or actually on the job. There was also a great emphasis on the rise of online delivery of key messages and the way that opens up space for exploring around these concepts and building up skills through gamified projects, simulations, and other angles on how we communicate innovation. Which is just as well, since it's becoming increasingly clear that the skills involved in innovation and entrepreneurship are moving from being delivered via specialist electives or minor courses or the subject of small-scale specialised master's degrees. Now they're being seen as the skills which are important for anyone looking to take their career forward or to make a mark on the world, and for organisations which need such skills to enable them to deal with the challenging goals for their future. So the market for innovation management skills is huge and growing. The challenge is one of our innovation around how to meet those most effectively. So all in all, a good trip. Plenty to see and plenty of food, not only for my stomach, but also for thought. Once I've managed to digest it, and this all-in soup of the conference was certainly rich fare, hopefully I'll be able to put in a little bit of exercise, taking some of those ideas into practice. But for now, perhaps I'll just close my eyes a little better to enable my digestion.